Hi, welcome to this five-part series on SDG budget tax. UN DESA's Financing for Sustainable Development Office has prepared this series in order to transfer the capacity to government officials in Seychelles of developing SDG budget tax. Given that this training is being delivered as a five-part series, the idea is for those watching to have the chance to review these videos at any moment in the future, whenever, and especially when Seychelles needs to do a next version of the SDG budget tag. So today we're going to focus on how to do an SDG budget tag for Seychelles. We're going to go over the files, the specific files, the different formulas that are available to do the SDG budget tag using Seychelles, of all of the files available for Seychelles. We're going to go step by step in all of this process to make sure that through the video you can understand all the different steps and especially be able to replicate these in the future. Uh, for those of you watching outside of Seychelles, we will explain how to do this for other countries in the future. But as you will see, when we navigate these different files for Seychelles, once you understand the formulas that are behind the exercise, it's relatively easy to replace Seychelles files with the files for the country that you are interested in. So let's start with what is a budget tag. Budget tagging is basically the process of specifying or allocating specific labels or identifiers to expenditures within a budget. The analogy that I like to use is when you post a picture on social media, for instance, on Facebook or on Instagram, you usually have a picture. Let's say it's a picture like this, but in order to have full clarity on who's in the picture, you're going to have to tag the people that are in the picture, whether it's on Facebook or Instagram. So that's the idea behind SDG budget tags. You label the different expenses and then you take a picture of everybody together. This first chart that you are seeing right now on your screens is the outcome of these five-part videos on how to replicate an SDG budget tag. We're going to get to this, but in order to get to this, we're going to have to do a few steps that will be explained further along the way in the next few videos. But by the end of video 5, you'll have the chance to understand, compile the data, and create an interactive version of this chart. Um, the idea is for this picture to be constructed, but also to give it some interactive nature, right? So we want to have to be able to click on different bars that you see here. For instance, if a person wants to see what's happening on SDG3, we're gonna allow for a person, for the user, to click on, for instance, SDG3 and see the specific projects, public projects that are within that have been labeled as SDG3. So that'll give us a sense, a more detailed sense of what's happening within the public budget that is supporting or financing SDG3. So that's the idea that we for this five parts video series on SDG budget tag. This video is the first of 5 that we're gonna develop in the next few minutes in order to provide you with a navigation in a walkthrough of all the files, procedures, and formulas that are available for, in this case, Seychelles. This is the picture that we want to compile at the end of the day. But let me start by asking why is it that we should do an SDG budget tag? Uh, I mean, the point right here is to be able to understand what kind of financing exists for sustainability, right? So one natural question at this point is, okay, why should I embark on doing tagging for 17 SDGs if, let's say, what's more common is doing a gender or a climate tagging? The answer to that is that SDGs cover much more of those development topics. Uh, yes, it is true that in some countries there has been a focus on doing gender tagging or climate budget tagging. However, when we are able to compile tagging for all SDGs, it's relatively easy to see how that contributes to having a much broader mapping of how financing is uh, uh, is being directed, or where it is going, the direction of financing, of available financing in the country. So in that sense, we're going to cover all 17 themes related to development. So in fact, we will also cover through an SDG budget tag, poverty alleviation tagging, peace tagging, obviously gender tagging, and climate tagging also. So, in short, it's more strategic to do an SDG budget tagging as opposed to, as a country, devoting a few months and a lot of, exercise and a lot of efforts, institutional efforts, to do separate taggings. That's less efficient than doing an SDG budget tag for all 17 themes or topics that the SDGs cover in terms of development topics. There are three things, or three reasons why an institution or an individual would want to initiate an SDG budget tag. The first one is that perhaps an institution or a country wants to measure progress towards specific policy goals. This could be SDGs, it could be climate financing, it could be NDCs, or as mentioned before, it could be related to climate tagging or gender tagging. So sometimes countries have a specific mandate to look at the financing that exists for certain topics. With an SDG budget tag, you can cover, as I mentioned, 17 topics, and that way you can actually, after you compile the SDG budget tag, start selecting the specific themes of your interest. So another way to see the objective or the reason why a country would want to initiate efforts on an SG budget tag is that sometimes countries are or want to actually present VNRs, that's voluntary national reviews for SDGs. So countries want to show, or sometimes there are commitments at the global level for countries to present, for Seychelles to present its progress on SDGs through VNRs or voluntary national reviews. That is another way to, or another reason why a country would activate efforts to do an SDG budget tag. Second is that a country perhaps wants to update its current public financial management system. So by doing an SDG budget tag, a country will have an updated version, a new way to look at public financial management or PFM topics. Uh, the way this supports PFM is that when you have an SDG budget tag, you introduce evidence-based decision making, right? You can actually, as a country, as a Ministry of Finance or a planning department, start adjusting or having input for decision making with evidence. We're going to see, we're going to compile the numbers, the data that exists for financial support for SDGs and all the topics within that. So it's good to have an SDG budget tag because it creates evidence-based inputs for decision making, but it can also support a better allocation of resources and a better coordination among stakeholders. That can be the Ministry of Finance with different stakeholders in society, or a conversation between the Ministry of Finance and the planning units. In the case of Seychelles, they are both within the Ministry of Finance. So it's a way, one of the reasons why a country or Seychelles would want to do an SDG budget tag is to increase the coordination or strengthen the coordination among stakeholders and do or to optimize resource allocation. The third reason why a country would want to establish an SDG budget tag is to communicate budgets or details within the budgets to society in a more friendly manner. Uh, as you know, budgets are usually highly technical. The people within the Ministry of Finance have access to data, they know what it is about, but sometimes people outside of the government, but also people within the government, are not necessarily familiar with budgetary details. So by compiling an SDG budget tag, you can have a tool to communicate the budget in a more friendly way to other stakeholders within the government, but also to outside stakeholders. So there is a more clear understanding on what the government is trying to do, or as a society, as a national, as a citizens through the budget, what the country is trying to do. So these are the three reasons why a country would want to start. I'm sure there are more, but these are the main three reasons that we have come up to explain why a country would want to start an SDG budget tag. There are other reasons why you should compile an SDG budget tag, or perhaps let's look at an SDG budget tag in terms of what can it be useful for, right? In that case, once you have a budget tag, um, there are three things that a country can do with an SDG budget tag. The first one is support the issuance of sustainability linked bonds. Um, Basically, the idea behind this is that when countries issue green bonds or blue bonds, they don't need an SDG budget tag. But what usually ends up happening is that there's a limited capacity in governments to create new projects that will be financed with the resources from the issuance of sustainability linked bonds. So if we as a country cannot create um, projects at the same pace that is required, what usually ends up happening is that we have to finance or refinance existing projects within the budget, within the current budget, without actually increasing the number of new projects, right? So in that case, you can actually use the SDG budget tag to select tentatively eligible budget items that can receive those resources that a country obtains through the issuance of sustainability linked bonds. So that's the first thing or the first strategy that a country can use once it has an eligibility tag. The second one is that countries usually and at the global level there are conversations in the context of financing for development in terms of financing gaps, right? How much does a country need to finance sustainability? That is one of the main questions nowadays in global conversations. Well, in order to understand the gap, you need to compile two inputs. One is how many resources the country needs, and two, how many resources the country has, or how many current resources exist in a country for sustainability. The difference between those two will give you the gap, the financing gaps, right? So obviously it's more difficult to come up with the amount of financing that is needed, but by using the SDG budget tag, a country will have clarity on how many resources a country is actually investing in sustainability. So by having an SDG budget tag, you automatically check one of those two inputs that are needed to come up with financing gaps. And the third use that a country can have on an SDG budget tag is that it can actually forecast formally or informally where a country will go at the current pace of financing. Basically, what kind of coherence do we see? As you saw before, the 17 bars will give you a picture of the budget. But what happens if that picture is the same across fiscal years, right? That'll give you a sense, if it stays the same, a similar picture, that there's not much happening in terms of where a country is going, that it's staying basically, that the expenses are very stable. If that's the case and a country has very different narrative goals or global commitments, then there is a conversation to have there with regards to how coherent, what is the policy coherence of the budget. If we have only these resources, and that's what we see from year to year, and the difference with narrative commitments or goals that a country developing priorities that a country has. So by having an SG budget tag, you can actually start looking at policy coherence in terms of national development priorities and whether we can finance those national priorities. It is important to clarify at this point that budget tags are not exclusively for national budgets. Some countries have used SDG budget tags to understand the direction of international development cooperation, but also for the case of subnational revenues. So within a country, there are resources that a country has available for subnational development, and those flows can also be considered here, as well as those resources, for instance, from state-owned enterprises or SOEs. Those are some other applications, broader applications that the SDG budget tag can have. All of this, just to tell you that today we're going to focus on the public budget, but take into account that there are other uses. Basically, as long as you have financial information of any kind, you can actually start playing with and allocating SDG tags and have procedures to do an SDG budget tag for that particular financing flow. Lastly, before we begin, I would like to share with you that the methodology that we're going to go over in the next couple of videos um, comes from this document by UNDP that has developed this particular specific SDG budget tag methodology. There are different ways to approach an SDG budget tag or to do an SDG budget tag, but this is one of the main ones that are available, and this is the one that we're gonna use. So, besides giving credit to UNDP, I would like to encourage you to check out this UNDP document that has more details. It comes with the criteria on how and how to allocate SDG targets to different budget lines, the treatment of operational expenses in capital expenditures. It has a step-by-step guidance on how to do the methodology, which we will cover in these videos. And it also comes with some warnings on how to avoid SDG washing. As mentioned, the SDG budget tag has multiple applications, not only to public budgets, but also to development cooperation flows and to state-owned enterprises. So again, this is the picture that we want to compile in the next couple of videos. And so we're going to do this for the case of Seychelles, using Seychelles files, budget files, and hopefully we'll be able to, you as a user will be able to compile this kind of data on your own after this series of videos. Thank you. See you in the next one.